Well, if you followed me here on The Garden Life for any length of time, you know that there's no secret that I adore boxwood. It is probably my favorite plant, both in the landscape, but also just because it's simply beautiful. So just a couple of years ago, I was introduced to Better Boxwood, the first boxwood that is developed to be blight resistant after decades of research in Europe. But not only is it blight resistant, it's also deer resistant, pest resistant. I think it's bronzing resistant. And my experience with it after just 2 years is that it is also really great and drought tolerant once it gets established. And I would also say it's pretty heat and cold tolerant. In fact, I wouldn't just say it was fairly cold and heat tolerant. I would say it was very cold and heat tolerant because it survived our 0-degree temperatures last winter and also 110 degrees last summer. Now, there are 4 different varieties that I think could be used in different ways, but they each have their own specific application and I think specific characteristics to commend them. Now, one way, of course, that I like to use boxwood is just in a classic hedge. And for that, I would probably use one of 2 of the different varieties, either Skylight or Heritage. Right here, I have Heritage growing. So it's pretty much a moderate grower. It will get to about 3 to 4 feet high and 3 to 4 feet wide, which makes it, I think, the perfect size and scale for kind of a traditional hedge. You see, I've got some right here. Ultimately, I'll be able to transplant some of these into a different location as they mature, which is another reason I love boxwood in general and Better Boxwood in particular, because it's been my experience that they transplant at almost any time of year so easily. So I'm going to keep these kind of pruned and it will give me just the right amount of privacy here on the east side of the upper terrace, give me a little bit of privacy, but also serve as an absolutely gorgeous glossy green foil against the beautiful roses that will bloom in kind of a pale pink. Another reason that I just adore boxwood, because it is such a gorgeous deep green canvas upon which anything can bloom. I mean, look how glorious it looks here with these white tulips. So if Heritage tops out at about 3 to 4 feet tall, and again, it makes a perfect hedge, Skylight will grow even taller. It's the tallest variety and it will top out at about 6 to 8 feet, which makes it not only brilliant if you want a tall hedge, but also brilliant for one of my favorite applications, and that is Topiary. It also tends to grow in kind of a conical form. So I've already got some cones established and I'm getting another one established right here with Skylight. I'll give it a subtle prune, but it'll absolutely be beautiful to kind of punctuate this corner. But as I said, I love growing it in not just a conical topiary form, but also more elaborate pom-pom type forms. And I've got one of those going over here. So everybody else, like me, is working out in their yard today. And one of the things that I'm doing is some really careful pruning because I'm starting to establish a couple of different topiary forms here. This one, again, I'm using Skylight. It grows in a very upright kind of vertical fashion. And this one I'm transforming into a 2-ball topiary. Now, I started clipping on this a couple of weeks ago, and look here. Look at all that beautiful new growth. So it's not only going to be a tall, beautiful 2-ball topiary, but it also will really thicken up very quickly. Now, next to it is the third in our category of really beautiful Better Boxwood. And this right here is a Babylon Beauty, and I love this. This might be my favorite variety of them all within the Better Boxwood family because it just naturally grows in this little tufted round form. So I'm going to give it a little haircut. I'm going to make it look even more tight and manicured. So if you're wanting to use one in a container planting, or if you're wanting to have small boxwood balls that repeat throughout your landscape, I would probably go for Babylon Beauty. Again, it might be my favorite. It is a little bit larger than the final variety that we'll talk about. This one's going to top out at about 2.5 to 3 feet, which is the perfect shape, I think, for boxwood balls that are container grown. It'll eventually get a little bit darker in green, but it has this very dense growing habit. The other thing that I think is characteristic of all of the Better Boxwood is the shape of the leaf, which varies from other kinds of boxwood forms, other traditional types of boxwood we would grow, because the leaf is a little bit smaller and a little bit longer and more narrow. It's got kind of a, almost a long teardrop shape. I think it's absolutely beautiful, and I can readily distinguish it from other types of boxwood in my landscape. Well, one of the reasons I love topiary is not only for its architectural shape and its exquisite beauty, but because I find tending it, maintaining it, and trimming it so calming, so stress-free, so meditative, and well, let's just say this is today's blower-free, lawnmower-free, yard equipment-free moment of zen. Et voila, the cutest little boxwood ball ever. It grows naturally in this shape, and it truly is a little Babylon beauty. And lastly, the slowest growing of them all, probably the one I think of as the dollhouse boxwood. This is Renaissance. It will only top out at about 1 to 2 feet at the most. It grows in a soft, kind of soft, mounded, compact form. It would be great for parterres, for a potager, for anything like that, or any kind of container garden where you wanted a very, very small specimen, maybe a window box, any kind of container planting. It's very, very sweet, but again, it's slower growing. So if you wanted a short hedge, it might work, but if you want a taller hedge, then go with Heritage or Skylight. And if you can't decide which variety you want to grow, then do like I did and just nestle them kind of all together. Look at this sweet little Babylon beauty in this tiny little boxwood village of heritage with a skylight as a cone shape behind it. Probably the next question that you may be asking yourself is not only which variety do I want, but where can I find them? Well, first of all, amazingly, I can't believe the price point that I have seen them at. And where have I seen them? So I've seen them at a great price point. I've seen them at garden centers like Lowe's and Home Depot. You can get them online via Plants by Mail. I've also seen them at independent nurseries and garden centers. So just look where you can find them in your area. You can go to Better Boxwood, their website, and find a location near you. But definitely, I mean, they're not only blight resistant, deer resistant, pest resistant, heat and drought resistant, cold resistant, but they are just absolutely beautiful. So there you go. If you haven't already, you might want to try growing some Better Boxwood in your own garden. Well, here's a great perennial tip. If you grow any kind of perennial in your garden that grows in this fashion with kind of an herbaceous stem, things like daisies, this Veronica, maybe your penstemon, if you want them to bloom later in a more bushy fashion and also bloom more heavily, then if you want, you don't have to, but if you want to do this, you can now. And that is, you can cut back the stems. I could cut them here. I could cut them very, very low. And for each one I cut off, 2 will come up at the base of that cut in between. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
In between those nodes, I can do it to these. I can do it to my salvias. Now, another way I can do it if I don't want to be that fastidious is I can just take some long bladed pruners and I can just go like this. And I can just, in short order, whack it back and not be so, I guess just so fastidious about whether or not I cut into the leaves. Now, the other thing you can do is, if you want some of it to bloom sooner and some of it to bloom later, then you could cut the front half and leave the back half. Or conversely, you could cut the back half and leave the front half. Or you could cut all of it, or you could cut none of it. The options are many. You especially want to do it with things like your chrysanthemums that you definitely want to postpone bloom until a little bit later. If your chrysanthemums and things go ahead and bloom, then by all means you can deadhead them, give them another feed, and hope for a second flush. So that's your perennial plant tip for today. Well, hallelujah. My shed has finally been fixed. The clamp is off. I'll be able to clean up this whole area now, finalize the last few things that need to be done in the backyard before the garden tour on Saturday. It looks like there's an 85% chance of rain on Saturday, so we'll just see. It might be postponed to next Saturday, I'm not sure. The tulips, the colorful tulips in the front are still slow in coming out, though the white ones I think just look pretty exquisite. So we'll just kind of see on that. While we're back here, speaking of Better Boxwood, here's another beautiful one. I'm gonna bet that this one is probably a Babylon Beauty. I'm going to do a little bit of clipping on that. I've got 1, 2, 3 of them right here. And then as long as we're back here, look how gorgeous the tulips look. Love, love, love them. And I think next year, here's my question of the day. Next year, I think I need to plant some over in this direction to kind of fill these spaces in here while I'm waiting for the Annabelle hydrangeas to really fill out, clear up, maybe even a few over there, because it looks like all the color now is concentrated in just this area, and I want to spread that over this way because over here right now it looks a little bit more barren. Part of that is just the way the light falls. Obviously, I also have to stage my steps, and I will be getting to that. I think we're going to try to finish up some things tomorrow, even though it's supposed to be windy. But but we will get it done. We're about to cross the finish line, and that just thrills me no end. So, so there you go. That's kind of what's happening around here today. Before we leave, I do want to show you some gorgeous Southern Living plants right now that I have yet to pot up. But look at this gorgeous Carex, this gorgeous Everillo, and this beautiful Alabama Sunrise Heucherella. These are gorgeous, and I think I'm going to pot these up. They look so beautiful sitting here on this plant stand that they may have to stay, because in the morning, which is the kind of light that they prefer, in the morning they get just the right amount of dappled sunshine right here, and I absolutely love it. So there you go on this very special boxwood edition of today. We have talked about boxwood, better boxwood. By the way, in terms of care and maintenance, just keep them moderately watered, not soggy. Don't let them dry out. Just feed them periodically, depending on your zone and your weather, with a balanced fertilizer. I like Top Buxus, but you guys can use any kind of balanced organic fertilizer. But other than that, they're just pretty low maintenance. Make sure to keep your perennials pinched back or cut back if you want them to grow bushy, if you want to delay their bloom. But those are just a few tips for you today on this special edition.